of Allah, who is the most beneficent and the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum. Milton as a poet. The supreme quality of Milton's poetry is its sublimity. His poetry is the expression of a pure and noble mind, enriched by knowledge and disciplined by art. Milton lived a life of purity and austerity, and his poetry bears the unmistakable stamp of the nobility of his character. Whatever he has written has a dignity and stateliness of its own. His poetry has an elevating influence on the mind of the reader, and this influence is exercised not only by its lofty thought but also by grandeur of its style. Milton was possessed by a keen sense of beauty. He loved beauty in all its forms. He was deeply sensitive to the beauties of external nature. The poem El Allegro testifies to his love of nature. He was a lover of art and music. Nowhere in Milton's love of beauty better displayed than in the early poems El Allegro, Comus, and Lycidas. They have all the freshness and charm of youth. There was, besides this love of beauty, a deep strain of Puritanism in Milton's poetry. In his early poems, there is a harmonious combination of the two strains, but in the later poems, the Puritan voice assumes a strident note. In fact, Milton becomes a stern Puritan during the later period of his life, and his religious zeal almost kills his humanism. Closely involved with Puritanism, there is in Milton's nature a strong bent of classicism, which is pagan and sensuous. He was a keen student of ancient classics and drank deep at the springs of the classical learning. He wrote Latin prose as freely as he wrote English. He chose classical forms of poetry to express himself: epic, Paradise Lost, the pastoral, elegy, Lycidas, and ode on the Nativity of Christ. His style was built consciously or unconsciously on the classical models. His fondness for classical allusion, the dignity of his style, the elaborate descriptions, and the similes in Paradise Lost all show the classical elements of his poetry. From his early youth, Milton had a consciousness of his destiny. He had a conviction that he was destined to be a great poet, and to this end he devoted all his energies and thoughts. His was almost a dedicated life, and he made the most strenuous preparation to fulfill his destiny. He lived a pure life and also lived a laborious days. For according to Milton, the vocation of a poet was lofty and exalted, and the life of a poet must be pure and noble. Poetry to Milton was not a mere intellectual exercise and diversion, it was something solemn and sacred. Poetry comes only from divine inspiration, which is possible, Milton says, only through earnest prayer to God. This was Milton's idea of poetry, and he pursued this ideal all through his life.